All right, we're jumping back to the drive shafts. The first thing I want to mention, mine came on 3 trees. An AX31 39.7, a AX31 11.14, and another AX31 11.14. 2 different ones. 3 trees, 2 different numbers. But don't get too confused by that, because in the instructions it's all labeled pretty clearly and pretty straightforward how to put it together. So the next thing I'd like to note real quick, they did change and improve this design over the previous one. Previously on the SCX10 and the Wraith, they had 1 male spline section and 1 female spline section, and the male section was hollow and fairly thin-walled. Now we have 1 male section and 2 female sections, and the male section is a lot thicker. You can see an obvious difference. The spline size is the same size and count, but the wall thickness there is a lot greater. And we're using the 2 females, 1 male, instead of 1 female, 1 male. The female sections have also changed slightly. The end is now more of a rectangle. Before it was more of a 4-pronged deal. So we do lack some interchangeability. The old male splines will fit in the new female splines. And vice versa, the new male splines will fit in the old female splines. But as stated, the end sections with the metal joints have changed to a different style, so we do lack some compatibility there. But overall, switching to the 1 male, 2 female design is an improvement. It should be more durable. These old style ones used to break fairly easily, but that wasn't too bad because that's the easiest part to replace. So you want the weakest link to be the easiest, cheapest to replace. So overall it was good, but it did need to be stronger. So enough of that. Now, how do we actually put it together? The instructions are really fairly clear on this. It's pretty obvious. You want to start here. This piece inserts, screw, thread lock it, put it in. Do that on both sides. Then you use this small piece and the pin goes in there, connects to here. On the end piece, there's a hole for the pin. Then the plastic cover is only to hold that pin in place, otherwise that pin could fall right out. So the plastic cover slips on, covers up that hole, keeps the pin in place. Otherwise, you don't actually need the plastic cover. The set screw is for connecting this to either the axle or the transmission, and it doubles as holding that plastic piece on. And it's identical on the other side, and it's very straightforward on the instructions how to put it together. The only trick you might have, which I've been having, this screw was not wanting to thread in very well into this piece, which you also do want to thread lock that because it's metal on metal, but I was having difficulty threading it in. So last thing to note on drive shaft assembly, I had a little bit of a difficult time getting these screws to thread in and come out the other side. I don't know if that's manufacturing defect or tolerance or parts made to match and not match others, non-interchangeability, but I had to go around and try the 4 screws with the 4 end pieces until I found a combination that fit, where I could actually get all 4 screws in, because some of them just absolutely would not thread in. So you might have to play around with that a little bit. You do have options though, because you do get some more of those screws in bag G, which don't get used for anything particularly important. I think those are body mounts or something like that. So you could try those as well, but just be warned, I had a tricky time getting those screws in, so you might have to do a little bit of swapping, test and try and fail, and just see which screw fits in good. Remember it, and then remember to thread lock it in place. Those will loosen up. So on to mounting everything up. I had to move the axle ends here to get the lower shock mount on. It was in the way. That's because I didn't follow the directions there. So that was in the way a little bit. Upper shock mount is all the way back right now in the rear. The front fits just fine. A little bit of a tight clearance. On the top, it's all the way forward. Remember, the stiffer, thicker springs go in the front. The lighter, thinner springs go in the rear. That's because your weight balance is toward the front with the battery and the servo, and that's for better traction on your hill climbs. Along with the shocks, you're doing up the suspension arms. Your upper control arms in the rear come out, and your lower control arms in the rear go in. That's the triangulated 4-link setup. It's pretty brilliant. On the front, similar story. Your upper control arm goes out, your lower control arms go in. It doesn't really need to do that as much because this isn't a triangulated 4-link in the front. It's a 3-link with track bar. So the links could all be parallel and it would rely on the track bar. With this current 3-link setup, you almost don't really even need the track bar, but it's on there anyway. Track bar bolts up to the track bar mount that's connected to the shock mount. It's all pretty straightforward. The upper arms take the longer 18mm screws. The lower arm, control arms, and all the shock mounts take the shorter 15mm screws. And then finally, once that's all connected, it's time to slip in the drive shafts. And that's why I didn't assemble them earlier, because they always like to fall apart. And if you don't have this screw in, you lose the end cap, you lose the pin, you lose the metal end piece, and you lose the little cylinder that goes in there. It just falls apart. But you can slip both the front and the rear in with it assembled. So your final step is put it in, thread lock the screw, and put it through to connect everything up. I did have a really tricky time getting these screws to thread in. I had to actually drill out the hole on this a little bit to get it to thread in finally. But otherwise, that pretty much completes the assembly, because anything else is accessories. Wheels and tires, bumpers, the body,